Hey everybody and Real Progressives, this is Jackie Lukeman, and I've been thinking about this topic that I started on a couple of days ago, about a week ago, about why I, as an African American voter, am Bernie or bust. And I saw a lot of comments from people asking, why do so many African Americans vote for Hillary Clinton? I'm certainly not suggesting that every black person who votes should be Bernie or bust. I just explained why I am. But I had to think about answering that question that people legitimately ask. Why do so many African Americans vote for or support Hillary Clinton when her history and the history of Clinton policies have done so much damage to the African American community? Well, two of those reasons are pretty simple, but they're very, very disturbing. One of those reasons is, believe it or not, classism. It is a subject we don't like to talk about in the black community, but we're not monolithic in our beliefs, in our consumer patterns, in our entertainment desires. So we're certainly not monolithic in the way we vote. And one of the reasons you see a lot of African Americans, according to the polls, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but one of the reasons you see a lot of African Americans supporting a politician who has supported policies that have done so much damage to poor black people is because most of those people who support her are not poor. There is within the African American community, a pretty good amount of apathy, ambivalence to the struggles of poor black people, basically because, we've made money and we got out of the hood, right? So we look at people who are still struggling in the hood, and I say we because I'm actually middle class myself, but I still live in one of the poorest areas of Southeast DC because I grew up here and I actually love this neighborhood very much. So I never forgot where I came from. I could go back to being poor if I lose my job, if my husband loses his job. So I can't divorce myself from my past. But a lot of African Americans have, because they believe that they have achieved a certain level of success in life, and they believe they have achieved the American dream, so they've made it. So they believe that they really don't have anything in common with African Americans who are still living in the quote unquote hood, who are still working jobs where they're making minimum wage, or who can't find a job at all. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of the more destructive policies that came out of the Clinton administration affected mostly poor black people. So here in Southeast DC, as an example, when things got really hot and heavy with the drug wars, that a lot of that didn't happen in like Bowie, Maryland, which is a part of Prince George's County, one of the wealthiest black neighborhoods in the country. That happened here in Southeast DC in a poor urban area. So the middle class black folks in PG County, out in Bowie, Maryland, and areas like that could look at black people like me who lived over here in Southeast DC in the thick of this and say, well, if they didn't commit crime, they wouldn't have this problem. Not understanding and really not even caring that the issue wasn't that everybody was committing crime. The issue wasn't that everybody was doing or dealing drugs. It's that the resources for the police departments were being targeted to nothing but incarceration of even low-level nonviolent drug offenders, people who just possessed a small amount of drugs. And if that person possessed crack cocaine instead of powdered cocaine, they got a higher prison sentence. They got a longer prison sentence than the person who possessed powdered cocaine. So even middle class African Americans who looked at people and said, look, if you don't commit crime, you wouldn't have this problem. They are so divorced from the reality of the injustices that those policies created in people's lives that they don't even care that people's rights were still violated. No one ever said that if you commit crime, you should go free. If you commit crime, you should certainly pay for the crime you committed, but the punishment should be commiserate with the crime. You understand what I'm saying? The punishment should be equal to the crime that is committed, and that's not what was happening during the Clinton administration, from the '94 crime bill and from the Welfare Reform Act. But it didn't matter to middle class Black people, a lot of middle class Black people who had more money than these poor kids who were being locked up for minor possession charges for a decade, who were having their rights violated by overzealous police officers, who were not able to afford representation in the courts and were being thrown in jail for decades at a time, then going to prison and not being able to pursue their education because education programs were cut out of prisons. And when they got out, they didn't have any support because of more Clinton policies. So classism is one issue, to the point that they couldn't even look at the fact that citizens' rights were being violated. Due process was being violated. People were being treated unfairly in the justice system. It didn't matter to them. To some middle class African Americans, poor Black people are those people. They are not like them. So they sort of feel like they kind of deserve the treatment they get. And that attitude is sometimes reinforced by the fact that Black people are one of the most religious groups of people in this country. And it is not religion that is the problem. It is especially Calvinism, this Protestant Calvinistic or reformed work ethic that has been adopted here in the United States, that basically conveys the idea that if you're successful, that's a sign that God has blessed you. And God has blessed you because you've worked hard. That is a tenet of Calvinistic thinking, and that's also an idea that Martin Luther, who is the father of the Reformed movement, that's something he also believed. And even though that's not in the scripture anywhere, if you go to any Protestant church in this country, that's the kind of theology that you hear around social issues, that people are successful because God has blessed them, and God has blessed them because they have worked hard. The inverse of that, or the converse of that, or the opposite of that, is that if people are poor, then God has not blessed them. And God has not blessed them because obviously they haven't worked hard. That is reinforced in some of our religious teaching, in some of our churches, in some of the most influential institutions in the Black community. So that is one of the reasons you don't see a lot of Black churches supporting movements like Black Lives Matter, supporting political candidates who are actively working for the poor, to improve the rights and access and equal opportunity for the poor, because from some of our pulpits, we're told that if you're poor, it's not only your fault, but it's because you haven't worked hard enough for God to bless you. I have had several of my friends who are African Americans, who are Democrats, who are probably middle class like me, point out to me that when I mentioned the problems with Hillary Clinton's policies and Bill Clinton's policies, that, not all black people are poor and not all black people commit crime. That's absolutely true. But what that kind of comment says to me is that as an African American, you're okay with not fighting for people who have less than you are, that less than you do, just because they have less than you do. As a human being, that's repulsive to me. As a woman, that's repulsive to me. But as an African American, coming from a people, a long line of people who have suffered so much and have given up so much, and have endured and conquered so much, partially because up until this point in time, we've stuck together. It's deplorable to me to hear other black people say it's all right for me not to care what happens to my brothers and sisters because they have less than I do. That's not acceptable to me. So I wanted to just explain a little bit why some black people are okay with supporting a candidate who has advanced and supported policies that's done so much damage to African Americans, and especially poor African Americans in this country, because it's a difficult thing to come to grips with, but it's just the truth. We're not monolithic in the way we vote and in the way we think, and sometimes we look at certain segments of our own group of people just as negatively as people on the outside of us do. And we do that when we think we can benefit from looking at other people that way. This is not true of everyone who is black who votes for Hillary Clinton. But I do believe that these two issues are the main reasons you see a lot of black support for the Democratic establishment and Hillary Clinton in particular. I appreciate your comments. I've actually written a couple of blogs about this, so you can check them out on my WordPress blog, Luke Mon Nation. Please check us out, my husband and I, on Coffee, Current Events, and Politics and Luke Mon Nation on Facebook. And absolutely stick around with Real Progressives as we continue this fight to support Bernie Sanders and progressive platforms all the way to California and beyond. Because every vote, every voice, every life matters. And Black lives matter. Thanks for listening.